So in the last video, we used the polyline package to create directions between our 2 points. In this video, we'll set up a draggable scrollable sheet that will come out from the bottom, which the user can scroll and select the car type. So since we want that sheet to be on top of the map, firstly, we'll put the Google map into a stack. So let's wrap the Google map into a stack. A stack needs children, so let's pass in children. And let's pass in a list so that we can pass the Google map inside that. Let's save that out. And there our map is still working. Next, we want the draggable scroll sheet to be at the bottom here. So let's add that into that stack. So here we'll use draggable scrollable sheet, which is available to us from Flutter by default. It takes a builder within which we'll pass in our context and we'll pass in a scroll controller. So the context is going to be of type build context and the scroll controller is going to be of type scroll controller. Next, let's open this up. Inside this, let's just return a container for now. And let's give it a color of colors.white. Let's save that out. There we can see we're getting our scroll sheet. In order to make the scroll sheet scrollable, it has to have a list view. Before we set that, let's set the size of the scroll sheet and the size of the map. As of now, the map is getting hidden behind the scroll sheet. So here we can set up a property called initial child size, and we'll start with a size of 0.5, which will be half of the available screen size. And also for the minimum child size, we'll pass in 0.5. Once we've done that, we need to make sure that the map takes up the rest of the space. So we'll come up here and we'll wrap our map into another widget known as the layout builder. So if we highlight that, it tells us that it creates a widget that defers its building until the layout is complete. The layout builder doesn't have a child. Instead, it has a builder, which again takes the build context, which we'll pass in as context, and it has something known as box constraints, and we'll call that constraints. Let's open that up. Let's move the Google map inside it. I'm going to pass in a semicolon here, and I'm going to return that. And here I'm just going to correct the spelling, and let's save that out. Next, what we want is, we want to use these constraints to size the Google map. So for that, I'm going to wrap the Google map again into a sized box. To the size box, we'll pass in a height, and the height is going to be constraints.max height, and then divide that by 2. Now as you can see, our map is taking up the remaining space and is not getting hidden behind the scrollable sheet. We can also get rid of this header here by coming up here to our app bar, in fact to our scaffold, and here we can pass a property called extend behind app bar. So if we see, it tells us if true and an app bar is specified, then the height of the body is extended to include the height of the app bar. So let's pass that in and set that to true. Let's save that out. Our map is now going beyond the app bar, so we can change the color of the app bar. Let's change it from white and make that transparent. And now as we see, we're seeing the map here completely and the app bar is missing. So now let's add our list to our draggable scrollable sheet. We want to show a list of cars. For that, I'm just going to create a list here. So here this list has 4 cars, and I've just put the first one as select a ride. Next, we'll come down here to our draggable scrollable sheet. And within that, where we have our container, I'm going to pass in a child here, which is going to be a listview.builder. Let's just pass in a comma there. Within this, we need a controller, which is going to be our scroll controller. We need an item count, which is going to be our cars.length. And then we need a builder, which is going to be the item builder, within which we have the build context, which is going to be the context, and we'll have the index. So here what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to return a card, which will have a child, which will be a list style. It'll have an on tab for now, which we're going to leave as empty. We'll pass in a leading, which is going to be an icon. We'll use icons.car_rental. Then we'll have a title, which is going to be the name of the car. So we'll say car and access the name. Let's just extract out the car here, which we're currently on. So we'll say final car is equal to cars and get the index. Then we'll have a trailing, which would be the price of the ride. So we'll say text, car, access the price, and then just convert that to a string. We need to close out the card and save that out. So as you can see, we're getting 5 lines here. And now this makes our scrollable sheet scrollable and draggable. We can drag it up and then we can also scroll it. But obviously we don't want selector right here to be on top. This is just to make it easy for this demo. Here I'm just going to say if index is equal to 0. Then we want to make this look like the title instead of the list style. So here I'm just going to pass in a padding, which will have a padding of edge insets dot all of 8. Here we need a semicolon. Then we'll pass in a child, which is going to be a column. We'll say children, within which we'll pass in a text, which will say choose a trip or swipe up for more. And let's close that out. So there we see we're getting our title on top. I'm just going to add some more styles to our card. Here we'll pass in margin and set that to edge insets.0 to our card. And to the list style, let's pass in a content padding and pass in edge insets.all of 10. That's looking much better. We'll also add a physics to our list style to prevent it from over scrolling, because right now it can go up and try and over scroll. Instead of that, we just want it to stop. So we'll say physics and set that to clamping scroll physics. Now if we scroll up, it just stops there and we can't over scroll it. The reason we added a column here was so that we can add one line here which indicates that this can be pulled up. So in the children here, we'll pass in a sized box. We'll give it a width of 50. And for the child, we'll pass in something known as a divider with a thickness of 5. Pass in a comma here. And as we can see, we're getting this line here, which will indicate that the user can pull this up. So our scrollable sheet is looking fairly okay, apart from the fact that we've got this extra space here, and we've also got this bottom elevation line. Let's get rid of this line first. It's coming from the card, so I'm going to come down to the card, and here I'm just going to set elevation to 0. So that goes away. And in order to actually remove this, it's because of the height being calculated incorrectly because of the property we passed in here on top. So here we had passed in extend body behind app bar. So I'm just going to comment that out. And our scroll sheet is working fine now. As we can see, we can pull it up. And if it had more properties, we'd be able to scroll it. And we can pull it back down. Let's just demo how we could select a car. So let's come up here on top and create a new variable called selected car ID and set that to 1 to start with. We can't use 0 because the 0 is being used as the header here. Now we can come down to our list style, and within this we can pass in a property called selected, and that will be true if the selected car ID is equal to the current car and pass in the ID. Let's save that. Now for the selected car, we need to give it a selected tile color. So we'll say selected tile color and set that to colors.gray with a shade of 200. So now you can see that this car is selected. We can change the selected car in the onTap method by updating the state and saying selected car ID is equal to the car and pass in the ID. Now if we tap another car, we see that that car gets selected. So we've covered pretty much everything we needed for this particular tutorial. Let's just add some last finishing touches. As of now, if we drag this sheet anywhere, it just stops. We only want it to stop when it reaches the end and when it reaches the bottom. So for that, let's go to our draggable scrollable sheet, and here we can pass in snap sizes and set the sizes we want it to stop at. So we can set 0.5, which is our initial size, and 1, which is our final size. Along with that, we need to also set snap to true in order for it to work. So let's save that out. Now if we scroll up, we see that it goes to the full screen and stops. If we scroll down, it automatically reaches the bottom.